So our agenda today, we're going to cover a few areas. First, we'll introduce the concept of DevEx for those who aren't familiar. We'll dive into a few areas that impact a good developer experience, including the things that you'll want to look out for. And then we'll explore why recently we are seeing businesses focus on how developer experience drives value for organizations. We'll talk about the current model for an ideal DevEx environment and what that might look like, and then some of the related challenges with achieving that for your business. Finally, we're going to look at a platform that we and some of our customers are exploring to help take developer experience to the next level. That's called Atlassian Compass. At the end, there'll be some time for a short Q&A. So let's jump right in. I'd like to begin by defining what DevEx is. We're not talking about how many languages you use or how many apps you've launched, the number of years of coding experience your developers have. I'm really framing the developer experience under the lens of the skills, tools, frameworks, and methodologies that support the software delivery lifecycle, and then how we aim to improve developer productivity both individually and collectively. Specifically, we're talking about how easy and how tough it is for a developer to implement a change, whether that's coding in a new feature, fixing bugs, or even just getting onboarded to a team where they need to catch up and get productive. You can really break those things down into a few essential areas that need to be addressed. There's the systems, which are the platforms, infrastructures, and development tooling that your developers use. There's process, which is really a curated set of processes that are easy to consume and understand around the development lifecycle. There's, of course, technology, which is a holistic view of how developer workflows, their DevOps tooling, their technology stack, visibility into all of those things. And finally, probably the trickiest area is really culture. It's so important to have an environment where there's developer empowerment and autonomy so that they can build great software that adds value. So really, we want to focus on what matters when we talk about a good developer experience. Reducing friction is very important, but perhaps the bigger picture is a heightened awareness that, really investing in developers, including their tools, their processes, their environments, that really drives a more productive and successful business operation. So we really want to look at designing a system that keeps teams focused on what matters most. It reduces the level of friction or toil. It enhances collaboration across inside teams and across teams. It enables speed and a faster time to market, and then really, driving higher developer satisfaction. So a positive experience here can really drive value throughout the whole life cycle of development projects and moving products to production. When I've worked with organizations that really pay attention to the developer experience, I've seen improvements across multiple dimensions. We see increased velocity in teams. When teams spend less time on non-value add activities such as environment setup or waiting on remote environments to test or reworking code, we see velocity increase naturally. Improved quality is another area that we see great improvements in. With developers focused on important tasks such as good design and implementation, quality will naturally improve. For example, one way of improving the developer experience is to reduce technical debt. Developers can build better design software if they don't have to accommodate tech debt. An uncompromised design just naturally leads to higher quality and a better finished product. And then finally, another area is faster onboarding and adoption. We see that smooth out quite a bit with a good developer experience. There's less documentation needed, less for new team members to have to read and remember to get up to speed and start adding value. So a lot of what's been said so far seems pretty obvious, but when you step back through the history of software development, really from the original, mainframe punch cards, which I'm dating myself here, to today's dazzling mobile gaming apps, developers have really always been essential to building, the applications and products that delight our customers. But the growing complexity of enterprise architectures and diverse technologies that developers have to navigate creates an environment where they're spending more time learning and managing technology than actually creating value-added business solutions. Complexity is impacting the ability to deliver in many of the organizations that we work with, but it doesn't have to be that way. So I think we all intuitively, as either tech leaders or folks working in the tech industry, product leaders, we understand that happier and more productive developers means better software, right? Happier customers, quicker time to market. Yet we've seen some organizations we work with where developers often have difficulty, getting going and being productive due to a number of things: restricted tool stacks, lack of access to what they need on a timely basis, whether that's tools, assets, software modules, et cetera. We see poor visibility into dependencies between services. We see low support for removing blockers. That's just to name a few. So let's look at what organizations across industries that invest in DevEx are actually saying about the impact of their strategies that aim to solve these problems. The majority of firms, is about 700 firms that were polled in a 2022 Forrester study, they indicate that they have a DevEx agenda they're executing on, and they're starting to actually realize value in several critical areas that are crucial for executing on their business strategy. So for example, we see a 51% increase in developer productivity across the board, 34% increase in profitability, and a 42% increase in or improved customer satisfaction. So these are just a few of the benefits organizations have enjoyed from implementing and executing on a developer experience strategy. So there's a few things that you can do right now from the start that will help new developers hit the ground running and create, what we consider to be in an ideal environment. Your developer onboarding experience is where it all starts, right? It's simple steps. Think about the kinds of access that new employees need, the tools that they'll require, and who they'll be working with before their first day on the job. Sorting these things out and then standardizing this process is going to get developers productive quickly and also show them that your organization is invested in seeing them succeed. If you've already got work management tools like Jira Onboard, you can set up a HR onboarding project that will help manage all the different first day items they're going to need across different departments. Next, if you provide a platform like Atlassian Compass, it will enable a self-service environment where there's one URL to find everything they need to know about a particular component, such as their Jira boards, Bitbucket repositories, Confluence pages, Slack channels, dependencies, and everything else. So this helps developers get up and running quickly, dive in and get productive and start working towards their first release. Another issue I see in many organizations is the lack of trust between their teams, maybe the tools they're using, the automation or lack of automation that they have, and even the development platforms that those things are operating on. As we know, trust is really a baseline for creating high-performing teams. This is one thing that can be difficult to navigate if your platform isn't well configured or provide that visibility for both developers and business stakeholders, upper management, to really be able to see how are things going in the software development lifecycle, where are the bottlenecks, what do we need to be addressing to make sure that our processes are working cleanly. A tool like Compass can really be a game changer for that. For developers, the microservices that they rely on can be monitored to ensure everything's working properly. Inter-team dependencies can be mapped, giving developers and stakeholders both a view into their work and how it's performing, and then where to direct attention to remove blockers. Having observability tools in place like Compass really gives back a bit of transparency for everyone in the business. And then automating things like your CI/CD pipelines, maybe security scans for new code modules that you're bringing in, et cetera, means less time waiting and more time doing. Finally, let's look at the human perspective. We're just that, we're humans. It's no surprise that we're forced to come away from tasks that are actually when we're forced to come away from a task we're working on to fix or unblock something in the way of getting it done, we lose our focus and taking that time to switch gears. So for a great developer experience, we really need to help those developers reduce the cognitive load, the things that distract them from valuable work. We know that having to wear too many hats creates wasted time. Fighting with tools and processes just slows things down. What we're looking for is focus. That equals progress at speed. I'd like to talk a little bit about the journey of one of our clients towards a better DevEx. One of the organizations we've worked with, they employed a dedicated group that was responsible for approving all external components and modules, open source software that developer teams needed to use to be able to build great products. So this approval process could take months for a single module to be approved. Of course, security is extremely important, but the approvals process was really slowing down the developers in their ability to be able to deliver value to clients. So because developers were so desperate to keep making progress, we found it common that they would bring their work home to their less secure home environments and work on it there, and then bring it back into the organization's environment when the components had finally been approved. So obviously not the best approach for a number of reasons: security, and then just the distracting developers from working quickly. They're taking, moving code around and just really not working in an efficient manner. They also didn't have a mature DevOps practice, so they didn't have automated CI/CD pipelines, and this, really slowed down the process of testing, validating code, and getting it out into production where customers could make use of it. So we recommended a couple of things. Automated security scans, that really reduced the time to approve the modules. They were going through a process of walking through the code. We said, look, there's lots of great security scans out there that can really help that. So really putting that kind of automation in place to really shorten the approval process. We also recommended creating test environments. They didn't actually have, they had a staging environment, but they protected that environment from any, new code that potentially is not approved. But a test environment where they could put those modules until they were approved by security in an isolated environment and then could be moved into their staging production environments really helped speed things up. Finally, we built out a DevOps tool chain to enable an automated CI/CD pipeline. Again, just smoothing that process and quicker time to release. So the result was really higher maturity in their DevOps practices, more streamlined software module approval process, and then obviously, a CI/CD pipeline. All those together really improved their time to market and time to getting great valuable features into the hands of their clients. So at this point, you might be thinking, where do I start? Well, you don't have to do it all at once, but just one step can start your journey. These are just a couple of areas that we recommend to look at. And again, for your organization, you'll want to pick what seems to make the most sense. But some of the things that we've seen that are sort of easy to get started on and have, really great impact. The first is really just uncovering what are the obstacles that your developers are facing. And this, for us, it's a two-pronged approach. Obviously, you want empirical information. So you want to look at things like mean time to release, how long does it take to onboard a developer? What's the velocity of your teams? Start looking at the metrics and things that you have in place to actually to empirically look at what does your productivity look like. But then the probably more important piece of that is the voice of the developers themselves. They know what's holding them up. They know what the bottlenecks are. They know where the frustrations are. So whether that's, doing surveys, having discussions, brown bag sessions, whatever that is, listen to your developers. Try and get to the root of what it is that's holding them up from being productive. And then from there, you can really create a value stream map and really drive through where are your bottlenecks, where are your pain points, where's the wait times, and from there really develop a change strategy focused on what you believe are the highest impact changes first. The next area, and I've talked about this in a couple of the slides, is really expanding the use of automation. You can adopt CI/CD. That's a great first place to start. You can use feature flag tools to decouple deployment from release to streamline software delivery. So a number of things you can do there with automation that can really help your process. We recommend including access to open source, or if you have a process for getting in new software modules for teams to use, make sure that you have a curated a curated area that folks can access that those modules, and a way to ensure that those are quickly approved and available as needed. And then finally, leveraging tools like Atlassian Compass, as I've spoken about. It really helps reduce cognitive load with a comprehensive developer experience. So it really helps developers find what they need, track software health metrics, and really improves the visibility across the organization. So on that note, I'd like to pass it over to Warren, who's going to take us through some of the ways Atlassian Compass really helps level up your developer experience. Warren?
Hey all, my name is Warren Marusiak. I'm a technical evangelist here at Atlassian, and today we're going to take a look at Compass, which is Atlassian's developer experience platform. So Compass improves the developer experience by reducing friction in the development process, and today we'll take a look at some ways it does this. Now, what do I mean by friction? There are things we all deal with that hinder our ability to stay focused on building cool software and getting into the hands of our customer. One problem we all face is time spent searching for the information we need. Our information is spread out all over the place across many different tools. We've got wikis, instrumentation tools, SCM and CI/CD tools, feature flagging tools, just to name a few. Each of these tools contains great information, but sifting through it and finding what we need can be really challenging. When I get paged because of a customer impacting problem at 3 in the morning, I don't want to be spending a lot of time looking for a runbook I need. I want to be able to find that runbook and fix the problem as quickly as possible so that I can get back to sleep. Another problem we run into is constant context switching. As I've mentioned, we work across a bunch of different tools, and jumping between them all the time can make it really hard to stay focused on building that cool software. So one of the ways Compass improves the developer experience is by getting everything aggregated under a single pane of glass. With Compass components, developers don't need to remember as many things. There's a single URL where you can find everything you need. For example, you can have links to your Jira boards, Bitbucket repositories, Confluence pages, JSM on-call schedules, team Slack channels, monitoring dashboards, metrics and dependencies, and a lot of other stuff. Compass components enable a self-service culture that reduces context switching and time searching for that information. So again, back to the idea of getting paged at 3 in the morning. With Compass, I can find that runbook by going to the component page for the failing software component. And it's just going to be linked there, so I can go directly to it rather than having to search my documentation for it. There's also a handy activity panel there that shows events from a variety of tools in a timeline view that links each event to their source. So if I see an alert from a monitoring tool in the activity panel, I can click on it and jump directly to the alerting tool for additional information. Next, there's Compass scorecards and metrics, which help teams understand the health of their components and what they need to do to improve. So you can create scorecards that check for things that your team cares about, and you can use those scorecards across multiple components, and you can share those scorecards with other teams. In particular, platform engineering and governance teams can build and distribute scorecards so that all teams are on the same page regarding component health. An example of how this benefits developers can be seen by thinking about a scorecard that monitors the number of open pull requests and the average length of time those pull requests have been open for. If such a scorecard is failing, if the checks in it are failing, we know that either there are too many open pull requests or the pull requests aren't being reviewed quickly enough. With a scorecard like this, teams can quickly diagnose that pull requests are blocking their developers from getting features in the hand of their customers, and they can take corrective actions. Maybe they jump on the pull requests and get them out the door, and maybe they schedule a little bit more time each week to review pull requests. Essentially, scorecards help teams be proactive about resolving developer impacting issues rather than reactive, because you can monitor for the problems before they blow up and become too large and then fix them. So Compass integrates with partner tools like New Relic, LaunchDarkly, GitHub, and Sneak. Teams are empowered to build their own integrations for the tools they use using Atlassian's Forge. One thing I really like about that is the ability to build custom integrations for tools you've developed in-house. We see a lot of our enterprise customers have in-house tooling they built over the years, and Compass combined with Forge can help you get that data into Compass. Using Forge, you can push and pull data between Compass and your custom tools and have it render in Compass like any other integration. Compass surfaces data from integrated tools on component page, so you don't have to jump between tools or spend time searching other tools for information relevant to your component. I find that saves me a lot of time. For example, if I want to modify a feature flag related to a software component, I can go directly to the flag from Compass rather than having to go to my feature flagging tool and searching for the flag manually. So if I need to disable a feature flag at 3 in the morning after getting paged, it's nice to be able to go directly to the flag rather than searching for it. And then finally, Compass helps automate building components using templates. So templates are kind of an organization's golden path. They help developers create software components in alignment with organizational standards. With templates, developers spend less time on boilerplate and plumbing, so they can get on with building the cool software. I don't know about you, but I really kind of dislike bootstrapping new projects. Setting up the repo, the CI/CD, everything else is a lot of work, even for an experienced dev. And for new team members who haven't been through that process before, it can be a total nightmare. They're not going to know that they need to cut a ticket to security for a security view or a ticket to the privacy office to make sure that the design handles customer data correctly. They're not going to know all the little details that are necessary until they've been through that process a few times. Now, their mentor can help them with this, but with Compass and templates, they're better able to self-serve that process from the get-go. Slide, perfect. All right, so this is a quote from one of our customers who uses Compass. Compass reduced the cognitive load on this customer's developers, made their developers happier, and it supported their company's best practices. So I'll give everybody a few more seconds to read the quote, and then we're going to jump into a pre-recorded Compass demo showing off a bit of how it works.
All right, today we're going to take a look at Atlassian's developer experience platform, Compass. To start with, we're going to take a look at the components page. Software components are basically a way of modeling all of the different things your development team has written code for and has to manage. So if you have an API that you've built, you might model that API as a software component. If you've got infrastructure as code that builds databases or AWS Lambdas or DynamoDB tables for you, you might also have those as different components. So components are just a way of logically modeling the various pieces of software that your development teams are responsible for. From here, we're going to drill into the submit image component by clicking on it, and we land on the component page for this particular component. From here, there's a whole bunch of information we can take a look at. The idea with this component page is that it provides a single pane of glass for the developers that are responsible for this component to find everything they might need about this component. The Compass component page is divided up into three main sections. On the left, you've got your nav bar. In the center, you've got your kind of main component page. And on the right, you've got a whole pile of links to various documentation, repositories, Jira workspaces, etc. So we're going to start by going through the center pane and looking what's rendered there. So in the center pane, we can see the component name, a description. You can attach labels to the component. We render a subset of the activity feed, which we'll talk about later. And we also render scorecards and metrics. Scorecards are a health metric for your component. You can create a variety of scorecards and attach a variety of scorecards to each component. You can also share components between teams. So the idea here is that a team is going to come up with some measure of component health. Maybe there's a variety of things they want to make sure each component has, monitoring from, say, Datadog or New Relic, security scanning from Sneak. All of these things can be set up and configured as scorecards. You can drill into any scorecard by clicking on it, and then you can see what criteria have been configured and whether or not they've been met. So in this case, we've met the owner team criteria. So that means that this component has an owner team assigned to it. We can see that there's been a repository attached, and we see that somebody's added a description. These are highly flexible. So you can set up any kind of criteria that you want in here almost, and you can tailor it to what your team or business needs. We provide some scorecards out of the box, but you can also make custom ones. And once a custom scorecard is created by any team, it can be shared with other teams. So every team doesn't have to create their own duplicate of a particular scorecard. You can create it once and everybody can benefit from having it. This is really useful for platform engineering teams or senior engineering leadership to provide standards and guidance for all development teams to follow. Scorecards improve the developer experience by giving developers an at-a-glance understanding of the health of their components and what things they can work on to improve the health of their components. Moving on to metrics, we can close this and scroll down a little bit. We can see that there's a variety of metrics that are being rendered here. You can add metrics to any component, and there's a variety of them to choose from. You can also create your own custom metrics. The great thing about metrics is that they give you at-a-glance understanding of how the development work is progressing for a particular component. If you have the right metrics in place on the component page, you can really quickly understand how effectively your team is churning out work. So you can see, for instance, deployment frequency here. We're deploying 3 times a week. If that's too low, maybe that gives you a clue that you should dig in and try and figure out why your deployments are low. Maybe there's a blocker that's negatively impacting your developers. Same thing with pull request cycle time. If you've got a long wait from when a pull request is open to when it gets resolved, maybe there's a problem that needs to be addressed. So by surfacing these metrics in an easy to find place, teams can keep an eye on how development is going, and they can address problems before they balloon into serious issues. And this improves the developer experience again, because again, you're addressing the things that are adding friction to the development process immediately. Instead of having 100 open pull requests, we might only have a few, because we know as this number increases, we should jump on our pull requests and get them out the door. Moving on from metrics, we're going to take a look at this right-hand panel. This right-hand panel contains links to a whole bunch of information that's relevant to the component. Do you want to know who or which team owns the component and who's on that team? You can find it with the owning team. Do you want to know what Slack channel to reach out to the team in? There's the Slack channel. Do you want to see the on-call schedule? You can link up your on-call schedule. And if you want to jump to it, you can just open it in a new tab. And we can immediately see the on-call schedule and who's on call. If we want to see which Jira project tracks the work for this particular component, we can open this in a new tab and we can jump right to their board. You can also link all of the documentation. So say you have Confluence docs for runbooks on how to resolve on-call problems, or design docs or other relevant information like that. You can link it up in the documentation section. And again, this gives you that single pane of glass to find that. If you've got metrics and other dashboards relevant to this component, you can link them in here. So you can have a single place to find all of that information, and you have single click to get to it. You want a Jira Service Management instance, you can jump directly to the JSM component so that you can start interacting with JSM. So this single pane of glass on the right reduces context switching for developers. They don't have to go searching for information. They can just come here, find what they need, and get to it immediately. So there's a lot less time wasted, a lot less time doing things that aren't their core objectives, which is building cool software and getting it in the hands of their customers. Now we're going to take a quick look at the left nav bar. So we've been looking at the overview page. You can also click on scorecards to jump into a page specifically about scorecards. You can jump into dependencies to see any dependent services. You can take a look at issues to see Jira issues associated with this particular component. There is config as code, so you can, instead of going through the GUI to set up all of this stuff, you can add a file to your repository which has this configuration if you want to, and you can see that config as code here. I'm not using that in this component, so there's not much to show. And finally, there's this activity tab, which is really useful. So the activity tab can pull in information from your deployments, your incidents, your monitoring, and your alerts. And it can also do the same thing for your dependencies, and it puts it in a nice timeline view. We can see that on June 3rd, there were a couple deployments in our component. There was an incident that eventually got resolved on June 4th. There was some kind of an alert from Sentry, and there were a couple other events. We can also see that our upstream dependencies had a couple of deployments, an alert from Sentry, some other events, and an incident. We can drill into any of these to see what in the tool raised this event. So if we right click and open a new tab here, we can jump to the Bitbucket deployment that raised that event. And here in this view, we can see the commits, the diffs, the pull request, and the Jira issues that were related to this change. So you can, at your fingertips, get to the information you need. We can also open up JSM by right-clicking on this incident and opening it in a new tab. So from here, we can get into the JSM tool and look at the work that was done to resolve this incident. We can scroll down a little lower and we can take a look at this alert from Sentry. We can also open this up in a new tab. And we can see the alert from Sentry, what was done or what was raised, and maybe get some more information about it here. We can also see some other events. We can open these in a new tab and go directly to, in this case, the Bitbucket pipeline that executed. So you can see all the steps that were done. From here, you can get information about the Jira issue that was raised about this. And we can see the same thing about our upstream dependencies. So we could look at the deployments for upstream dependencies, their alerts. So let's take a look at this alert. And in this case, we can see there was some kind of example Python exception. So you can plumb a pile of events in from different services, and you can render them alongside each other in a timeline, which is really helpful for understanding kind of how different parts of your system are interacting with each other, and maybe building a timeline of a failure out if you're doing, say, on-call work. It reduces the amount of time developers need to spend searching, and it also can help reduce the amount of context switches, because instead of having to go to each one of these tools, looking up events related to their component, and then manually trying to correlate what happened and when, you can kind of pull that all into your activity panel and see that, again, under a single pane of glass. Now, if we look on this left-hand nav bar, we can also see apps. There are 3 apps installed in this instance of Compass. If we jump over to another component, we can see that there are many more apps installed in this case. You can install integrations through the apps menu. So if you click on it, you can come in here and we can see that we've got a variety of apps that are ready to go out of the box. So you can scroll down, choose any of them, and install them from here. Now, if you have a home-rolled application that you use to do some work with, maybe you've got a custom app that you built and have been using for a decade, home-rolled tools are quite common. You can integrate those into Compass using Atlassian's Forge platform. So if you do that, you'll end up with your own app sitting on the side under apps, and you can send and render whatever data from that app you want. So that's very useful for teams that already have existing tools that they use, and they want to integrate it with Compass. One of the great things about Compass is how easy it is to get started. We've got some resources to help you with that. In this case, a YouTube video that shows you how to get Compass set up with data similar to what you've seen in this demo in under 10 minutes. Please take a look for that at the end of this webinar.
Thanks, Warren. Just, really amazing functionality there to help you get started in your DevEx journey. So thanks for sharing. So in closing, I think, what we've tried to describe here today is that DevEx is really a domain more than just a bunch of operational improvements and productivity enhancements. It's really a portfolio of end-to-end capabilities that touches all aspects of the developer role. DevEx consists of the range of mutually reinforcing capabilities that an organization provides to maximize both developer productivity and developer satisfaction. They're really mutually reinforcing dimensions. As developers are empowered, they often perform better and vice versa. So in fact, pioneering organizations are already proving the DevEx business case. We found that companies focusing on best-in-class developer experiences achieve a 60% higher revenue growth than those that don't. I mean, those are some amazing numbers. We're here to help you start or amplify your DevEx strategy. Wherever you are on your journey to a great DevEx experience, we'll meet you there.
Woo! Thank you, Warren and Val. I love this topic. I'm so happy that we're here kind of focusing in on this. So we do have a few questions. The first is, how can we know when we have a developer experience problem? How do you begin to untangle that?
Well, I mean, that's a great question. And really, there's a lot of things you're going to want to be looking for. Just basically, like I said before, talk to your developers. They're going to tell you, and they probably already are, where the frustrations are, where the bottlenecks are, what things are slowing them down. They want nothing more than to stay focused and be working on what's valuable. So you're going to hear it from the voice of your developers. You're going to see it in your team metrics. And I think metrics is a really key part of this, right? If you're improving your developer experience and you're not measuring anything, well, you're not going to know if those improvements are having impact or if you should pivot to different improvements that are going to have a higher impact. So look at how the teams are focusing. I talked earlier about, some of the ways to start, or just, start looking at your metrics, asking teams where the bottlenecks are, and then start building a strategy around what you think is going to have the highest impact on your organization.
Warren, did you want to add anything into that?
That was a great answer. I definitely agree. Talking to your developers is key here. As a developer, like when there's a problem, we all complain about it with each other and probably to our manager. So you can tap into that information and aggregate that. And then, yeah, I like metrics. Not like trying to measure productivity metrics, but looking for work that's building up. So like getting a picture of how much tech debt you've got in your system is probably a great thing if you can get it. The number of pull requests and stuff like that are really important. Deployments per week, because like if you're deploying slowly, that probably means that there's processes and inefficiencies there that can be streamlined, and those are probably blocking your developers. So don't look at it like, how do I measure my developers? More so like, how do I measure whether my processes are getting in the way of the developers getting their work done? That's how I like to look at it. And then how do I streamline stuff so that they can stay focused on their goals?
I think this is a great follow-up question. So imagine now that you've listened and you've paid attention and you can tell, right, that this is maybe a problem. Where do you get started? It seems like there's a lot of layers to this very complicated but important problem in this business unit. How do you get started? What's the first place? What's the first thing?
Well, I mean, I think we've said it, understanding the current experience and what it is. But another really great area, once you understand where the issues are, is, empower a platform team. They can be an internal group that's focused on the developer experience. So they're a team that starts looking at the bottlenecks and issues that are coming up, and starts working towards enabling perhaps self-service, as Warren described. That's a great first step. Any self-service you can provide to developers, they will know what it takes to get a developer onboarded as quickly as possible. That's another great area to start, because it's the first time your developer is going to have a look at your organization and an experience what it's like to join your organization. So not only is it great for retaining talent, because they're going to go, hey, this organization cares about me. They want my onboarding to be easy. They want to get me productive fast. They want to keep me productive. It's going to make it easier for them to bring new folks into the organization and to attract new talent as well. So that's a great added value of that. I'd say also using a developer experience platform. We've looked at Compass. There's ways to provide that great developer experience by centralizing everything. So, you're not going to get everywhere at once, but you saw with what Warren showed us with Compass, you can build that over time. You might start with just a few things in your single pane of glass, and as you build out more resources, more things for your developers to easily get going, templates, whatever that is, you can continue to build that developer experience over time.
Val, this question is, you've made a connection between developer experience and ROI and even developer productivity, but it seems that there's an obsession with this. And Warren, actually, you talked about this, that you need to be careful of how you're measuring this. The question is around, it seems that companies are obsessed with developer productivity. How do I properly communicate the difference between developer experience and developer productivity so those things don't begin to become misunderstood?
Yeah, I mean, that's, it's understandable. Senior leaders want to know, is my team productive? I mean, it's a question all of us have faced. How do I know that they're performing at the highest level that they can, and what can I do to help promote that, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously, as I said earlier, we know there's a correlation between how happy our developers are and how, quickly and with high quality our products get out to market. So I think it's hard to measure exactly how productive developers are, and sometimes organizations, allocate a disproportionate effort and resources trying to find that, what's that one magic measure? Well, that's because it's a host of things, and there's a lot of levers to pull. And as we've talked about, you may have to experiment. You may have to try. Okay, we think these things are going to have the greatest impact. Let's experiment. Let's see. Is it having impact? Don't get stuck on something. If it's not working, don't keep investing in that. So be in the mode of experiment, fail fast, measure your results, see what's happening, and then move to the next impact, right? You can think of developer experience as really how developers feel about the tools. So it's not just, I'm going to start measuring you. As you know, you can probably see the collective rolled eyes of, oh, great, they're measuring my productivity. No, if you're focused on making their experience a better one, less frustrating, more productive, focused, keeping them from having to constantly switch tasks and do context switching, they're going to be happy about that. So telling them, hey, I'm measuring your productivity, that doesn't mean anything to them. Saying, hey, I'm going to improve your experience and your ability to deliver great software, to our customers, that's where we really want to be. So developer experience, engineering culture, those are really two inputs to developer joy. That's how I think of it.
Yeah, it's the journey, not just the destination.
Yes, exactly.
Warren, did you want to add anything there as a developer? I'm sure you've been on the other side of this and it's been a frustrating one.
Yeah, the productivity measurement has, I don't know, never worked out well in my experience. I'm sure, you can get good information out of it, but I've not seen efforts to measure that be valuable. Where I have seen places make gains is, again, removing friction from the development process, streamlining those processes. Like that's the stuff that actually makes people happier. If I spend less time in meetings, less time working through clunky processes, getting approvals, waiting on other, administrative functions to block stuff or unblock things, I can be a more productive developer because I have more time to spend heads down building cool software. And like, I think, I don't know, this is maybe just me, but like developers want to build cool software and they want to get those features they build into the hands of their customers because they're proud of them. So anything we can do to streamline that process, that's, I think, where the real value comes out in this discussion. Like, that's what we want to be working on.
I love that. I mean, TLDR, focus on the people, empower the people, which I think brings us to this last and final question that's been asked. It's what's the best ways to continue to build this healthy engineering culture? There's tools, there's a focus, there's an intentionality. You guys have talked a lot about that, but culture certainly plays a big role in bringing your full self to work, loving the way that you can work. How do you like build a process or an intentionality to focus on an engineering culture? What does that look like?
Well, that's a great question. I think, we talked about it earlier. We're really talking about some level of autonomy and empowerment here, right? The more you can put in the hands of your developers, that culture allows them to take ownership. They, like Warren said, they're proud of what they're building. They want to build great code and they want to get it out. They want to get those products out to clients. They want to see happy customers. So let's take advantage of that natural inclination, right? And build on that. Build a code culture where as I said, maybe you've got a curated set of open source. Empower your developers. Create a COP of developers or architects that are curating that and take responsibility for bringing great source code in to build products from. Empower self-service. As much as you can, allow developers to self-serve and being able to, build sandboxes or, get the microservices they need or see the dependencies among different, services or APIs so that they don't, step in the wrong direction. So as much that culture really, that culture of trust that our developers want to do a good job, of course we can put the guardrails in place. We don't want, like the client that I talked about, where developers are taking code home and building it on their own systems just to make progress, right? Put the guardrails in place. We have a great test environment for you to do that in. So that, again, that culture of handing over as much power to the developers so that they can make progress and do a great job, it works both ways. We trust them, they build great code, and they trust leadership that we have their best interests in mind. Like Warren said, keep them focused on the core thing that they love to do. Build cool stuff, get it out to clients.
Warren, anything to add?
I like the focus that Val brought up about like development environments and getting developers able to self-serve a lot of that stuff. If you can spool up test environments where you can be able to experiment safely and try stuff and build things and maybe put that in the hands of your beta customers and stuff like that, and just work without worrying about breaking production all the time, that's a huge productivity booster in my opinion, because I can basically work hard, build cool stuff and get it out there without having to always be stressed about going through a ton of processes for production vetting. So I think that's one of the biggest ways of improving if you don't already have something like that in place. Get that kind of tooling in the hands of your developers so that they can work on stuff without having to, I guess, fear breaking production or impacting customers negatively when they experiment on new feature development. And then automate like administrative stuff as much as possible.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that like Atlassian does is Jira gets updated whenever you make changes in your source code by tagging the commits and commit messages with the Jira issue IDs. So no developer has to go into Jira and add updates saying I worked on a thing or I did a thing. All that gets populated automatically. Those kind of automations save time and get the developer focused on stuff they want to do, which is building software, and they spend less time on administrivia, keeping people updated, reporting, stuff like that. So the more that you can automate, you're going to have a better, happier developer who can spend more time doing the stuff that you're actually paying them for.